Okay, it's a little after 5:15, so we'll call the meeting of the Recode Rowlett Committee together. It's Tuesday, July the 8th, 2025. And I guess on the agenda tonight is one, we'll do the minutes and then we'll turn it over. And just a comment, we've got, what, 2 more meetings or 3? That was on the regular, and wasn't there 6?
No, there's things we need to get done. 6 months.
Oh, 6 months, okay. All
That would
right,
be
I had
12
6 in my head.
12 meetings,
Okay,
but that's of course a goal. We'll see how quickly it goes these.
all right. And did everybody get a chance to read the minutes this morning or this afternoon?
Yes, sir.
Anybody got any? Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. A motion by Mr. Cote and a second by Ms. Williams. Anybody got any comments, changes, or anything? Otherwise, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as printed?
Aye.
Looks to be unanimous. It looks like we have all but 2 people here. And so now I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager.
Thank you very much. So first I want to introduce the new guy in the room, which is Derek Hall. He's our new Community Development Director. Will you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. That's all.
First off, it is a pleasure to be here. I come by the way of Fort Worth, Texas, and recently served there as a planning manager. But I have about 27, 28 years of experience. So this directorship is probably the 4th in my long series of relationships with municipal governments. I got my start in Washington, D.C. I was an intern on Capitol Hill. So I have a pretty strong legislative background. So I like sometimes getting involved with text changes. You'll find that and most planners, they absolutely hate that, and I like to kind of dig in with that. But I also work for the city of Detroit and their planning and development department. It's places in California, so I have kind of a unique diversity of planning experience. Part transportation, part land use, part zoning, part community development. So you name it, I've probably experienced it in about 6 or 7 different communities. And so I'm happy to be here today. Happy to join such an illustrious team of planning and community development professionals. And I've committed to Christoph that I will not lead you astray. He's going to be here for a couple of minutes, then has to go to another community meeting. But he has given me the charge to kind of carry on what has been built. And so what I've looked at in some of your past meetings that I'm really encouraged by, and certainly with the assistance of the staff, I think we can get through this process. So I look forward to working with you.
Derek, would you be helpful if us just kind of introduce the room so that you know
Yes.
who's here?
Well, before that, Derek, can you tell us, that was nice in your professional career, but where did you grow up? Where were you born? Where did you grow up at?
Where I was born, where I grew up. So born in Detroit, I'm the youngest of 7. My parents moved from Detroit in 1976 to Arkansas. So I spent my formative years in, as we call it, the great natural state, or the land of opportunity. Eastern side, so my county was Lee County on the Mississippi River. So
George Helena?
toward Helena, that was a neighboring city, one of our rival city high schools. So I grew up in Marianna.
Oh, sure.
So right off of I-30 or 20, I get them confused. Whichever one is more important. I-30, yeah. So I know the area very well. I used to live in Dallas between 2004 and 2007, and then I saw the crisp waves of Southern California and stayed in Los Angeles probably for about 16 years. So after public sector retirement, I decided to move back to the Southwest, and I happen to think that Dallas-Fort Worth has some of the greatest quality of life. So I am here.
The beats Marianne.
By a long shot.
So if we wouldn't mind, let's just quick introduction for you so that he gets a feel for the committee. Start over here.
Start with me.
Yep.
I'm Preston Wallhood. Fourth Group is the firm that we work with, and we have a project on the north end of Rowlett. It's 250 acres, 800 units, that is really, it's a PD, but it encapsulates both of Rowlett's current zoning codes, the form-based code and the RDC, and all of the problems within them. And so when they asked for input on this committee, it said, we're familiar with both of these codes, and we're happy to tell you what works and what doesn't work, and happy to be here to participate and help.
What's the community member?
Stan Martin, retired safety professional, 40 years, 22 years in Rowlett, living, and I was born and bred and will be dead in Texas.
Aspirational.
Mark Cameron, moved here about a year and a ago. Love it. From Southern California, Long Beach, LA area. And I'm basically community leader and, everything.
Carter Holston lived here 40 years, just retired from NEC where I led the corporate real estate.
Kelly McKee, I'm an attorney, and I've been in Rowlett for about 20 years.
John Cote, been in Rowlett for 10 years, lived pretty much all over the world.
Tamara Williams, I've been around that since the 80s, and I'm on the P&Z Commission, and I'm learning a lot on this commission.
And I'm Stanley Pollard, and first of all, I want to apologize. I didn't recognize you. Simply because I met you last, 2 weeks ago at the PZ meeting. But I am from North Little Rock originally. That's the reason I made the comment up there. And I've been here since '89, now 36 years.
Jonathan Reeves, City Council, and I've been a Rowlett resident for 23 years, and I grew up in Garland, so long point.
Thank you for doing that. I'm standing up here because, of course, I've got a little meeting over in Liberty Grove area about a little project that's happened over there. If you don't know about it, we're lucky individuals. But we've got to go do some communicating to the residents in that area, trying to help understand about what's happening. We're trying to fix it. And I'm one of the ones that gets attached to have that conversation. So I'm going to turn this over to Derek. I did tell Derek you couldn't go too far from where we have started. Tonight you're looking at R4, R5, and R6. These are complex residential zoning districts. The goal being, as we've discussed several times, is to try and create zoning districts that will allow us to place zones on existing development and make it conforming, not to create non-conforming. So I know for some of you, higher density is uncomfortable, but we do have higher density development in the community already. The goal is to try and get zoning that will allow us to put it on that existing development in a way that makes it conforming development rather than creating inconformities. Questions before I leave and Derek jumps in?
Yeah, just out of curiosity now, let's say we go ahead and form all these nice zones, and down the road, we have one or two projects that are legally non-conforming. At what point in time do they have to be revised or reworked and become conforming?
So you can't expand a non-conforming use.
Okay.
And a non-conforming use is grandfathered for as long as it continues in existence. If it gets wiped out by a tornado, it can rebuild as long as it's rebuilt exactly as it was, as long as it's done within a year. If it sits fallow for a year and isn't redeveloped, then that non-conformity or that grandfathering is lost. So as long as they continue to work, if it was wiped out, it comes back. But as long as they continue that use, they can continue in a non-conforming status. The challenge is being in a non-conforming status. It's more, I think, problematic probably for commercial properties than it is for some residential properties. But again, some of these commercial properties act like residential properties. It becomes hard for them to get financing or do other things in order to continue operating when they're continuing to be non-conforming. So when they're looked at as a status from a banking institution or an investor, you're buying a non-conforming use, which means that you have limitations and some risks associated with that. That's why we try to avoid it. We can't always avoid it. We do have non-conforming uses in the community currently. The goal is to minimize that. We won't be able to eliminate it completely. It's simply to minimize it as best we can. Questions?
No.
Ready to go?
Yes, I am. And as Christoph walks out, I want him to look at this first slide. I was looking at it and he was like, what is Darren up to? So I thought, what would be a great point of discussion initiation for today? As Christoph mentioned, we looked at the traditional lower density residential zones, R1 through R3. So I thought something very simple, step up, right? So if you imagine for just a moment, you're walking up the stairs. In order to get to the next level, you have to step up. So think about as we endeavor to go to these medium density residential zoning districts, we're just stepping it up a bit. And as a result of us stepping up, just keep in mind that traditionally in planning, there are always buffers, there are always natural transitions that we make to get to the next level. So if we can all kind of start on that premise, I think we can kind of understand now what we're trying to achieve as we look. One of the other things that Christoph had shared with me, and I told him that I think is very important, in any zoning ordinance, in any city in America, you will always have an intent. And here, the intent for R4 kind of pulled out just some salient points. Is looking at things that beginning to transition to step up the residential types to be more intensive in terms of use. So duplexes, townhomes, all zero lot lines. I'll tell you, when growing up in Arkansas and then moving here, I'd come here before I went to college. My brother used to work for Texas Instrument. And when I got to Dallas, some of the traditional Dallas neighborhoods, I never knew what a zero lot line was. I just saw what I thought was very neat. It's like, oh, these houses have front lawns, the garages are in the back. I was like, this is great. I never want my car to have a view of the lawn in the first place. So I was asking people, what are these things? And people, I wasn't even a planner at the time. They said, oh, this is a zero lot line house here. There is literally no, almost no lot line between the neighboring properties. And I thought it made for a very cohesive, kind of community of sorts, a neighborhood. But, when we began to look at some of these residential districts, particularly R4, we're looking at a higher density where you will have things like a townhouse, things like duplexes. Some of you on the commission, some of you on council, you've seen that we have continued to receive these types of developments for consideration for both bodies. Cottage home clusters, and that's simply an open space area where there are a cluster of homes that are built around. These are particularly now, as we're looking at aging in place and seniors who are having very large lots, multiple acres, and they find that they no longer want to manage. They're looking at downsizing, but still wanting to have that communal feel. Maybe still reside in the neighborhood that they grew up in. And new developers are now building these cottage developments where there's a communal space, you can still have your garden, but it's a lot less square footage and it's a lot less to maintain. There's typically, a service that comes that provides the general landscaping, but it's a communal living still with your individual space. So we kind of see this being constructed and being built and offered, particularly as we embrace more aging in place. And AARP, for instance, at the National Planning Conference, talks a lot about this particular concept and how, as people are living longer, we're gravitating more toward this lifestyle. So what we're going to look for are, to provide areas that will include both your traditional single family, but also attached dwelling units and clustered around a common open space, which can be used for buffers to existing single family. Some of the ones that we saw in R1, R2, and R3 zoning districts. Interestingly to note, this district provides for resource protection and preservation of sensitive lands. So in areas that maybe are around the lake, for instance, or some sensitive areas, some areas where we have some species that are native to the area. There are intentional efforts to make sure that there's a preservation of those sensitive lands. And then the complementary land uses are always schools and daycares. So these are individuals who may be in their first or second home purchase. They're buying up, so to speak, and they need those types of supportive services that are going to be there to kind of help transition the ease of their quality of life. So what I wanted to do is just kind of show you some illustrations and with the help of staff, you know, kind of looking at some realistic examples that we have here or that we're going to have, as you'll see in some of the later slides, here in the city of Rowlett. So here's the villas of Long Branch. Staff, help me out. This is located off of Miller.
Miller and Rowlett.
Yes. I remember passing by this place. And so this is fully under construction now. It's probably almost all built out. They still have a little bit of construction, I think, going on. But you can kind of see now, as compared to some of the less dense residential zoning districts, as we get to R4, 0 lot lines or almost no lot lines. But there still is a presence of single family life. So you have a front yard, for instance. Your traditional street, the houses are just a little closer in nature. Any questions?
Does, how they're platted, does that matter in this discussion? Like if they're individually platted or platted as a, you know, like attached townhouses, does that go into this?
That's a very good question, and I will tell you, one of the things that we consider at the platting stage is if houses that are attached are individually platted, there is a part of a process that we do at the building stage where we indicate and we require that there be a firewall, I think we call it.
Yeah.
And we have Michael here that's going to help me out with my building language. But we make sure that in the event, because these are attached, if they're sold, that there is a limited risk in terms of there being the ability for the next property to catch fire. Now, that isn't.
Well, that's pretty
sure
solid
problem.
for any
Yes.
townhouse. Too.
Yes. Okay. But in this instance, if they're platted separately, they can be sold individually.
Right.
The issue is obviously if it's just one plat, it makes it very difficult unless you do somewhat of a condominium type of conversion on that particular plat.
Can I also add as well, so for the planning side, we don't look at whether something's for sale or for rent. When we look at multifamily versus single family, we look at how it's platted. So if it's individually platted, we treat it like single family. It's platted on one lot, then we treat it like multifamily.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's, to Brittany's point, that isn't a land use consideration. We hear it a lot. You know, the community obviously wants to know in some instances if this is rental or not. But from a land use perspective, it's nothing that we can consider as it relates to the merits of the project.
Got it.
Very good question. So now, if I'm not mistaken, at this point, and I don't know how many of you all bought your homework sheet, we kind of go through this residential, R4 residential density. Kind of talk about the purpose and the intent, but we began to look specifically, and staff has done a comparison of what is being proposed versus what is in the Rowlett Development Code versus the Form-Based Code. And this is, UN is urban neighborhood?
Yes.
Perfect.
Sorry, still getting to learn some of these acronyms. So what's your thoughts on minimum lot width? What we're proposing is 40 feet. There's a difference between the RDC and the form-based code, urban neighborhood. So in the Rowlett Development Code, 50 feet with 55 minimum on corner parcels. And that makes sense because it's probably, is that related to corner clips or having visibility on those lots?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
As it relates to corner parcels, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the minimum lot width.
Oh yeah, in general, whenever we do a corner lot, they'll have to be like 5 foot wider because of visibility, so the visibility triangle cuts into a little bit.
Yeah, and I think if you take a look at that drawing right there, you can see the difference between that 40 and 50 foot because The villas in Long Beach, I believe, are at 50 foot versus, lower right-hand side, they're on, I believe, that's Sarah Drive, that's an R5, and those are all 40-foot fronts. And so you can just visually see the amount of increase in density you'll feel between those two. I'm not real big with a 40-foot minimum lot width.
Can I ask you a clarifying question on
Sure.
that? Brittany, when y'all wrote these recommendations,
Hi.
when y'all wrote these recommendations, I noticed we stepped from R4 to R5, and is R4 intended to still be single-family detached, or is it intended to be single-family attached as well? Or just include like a single-family villa block?
I think the L4 is supposed to maybe be I'd have to look at it again exactly, but I think it's supposed to be a little more flexible. Do you mind if I?
Sure,
Hold on,
because
I'll throw them
so
for me.
R3, just to recap from last time, we finished at a 50-foot wide lot. And so now we are stepping to additional density. And my concern from a development standpoint is that we need something in R4 that does not just immediately jump to R5. Because the next thing in R5 is where you're gonna see duplex, townhome, any type of attached dwelling unit. And the density goes way up. It also includes multifamily. And from what y'all have mentioned previously, I think there needs to be a step in R4 that allows some type of attached product that doesn't immediately go into R5. Because otherwise every developer is gonna say, I need R5 for any type of density.
Which R4
Well,
does.
R5, I'm sorry, the R5,
It has the same width, John. That's what I'm looking
is in
at.
40 and up.
And so what I wanted to show you, and this is difficult to see, I've had to pass around. This is a site plan for the buildings that are Cotton Creek that Grenadier built. And so these are the attached single-family dwelling units. The building themselves is between 32 and 38 feet wide. And
Yes,
so that would almost fit on this product. And that's really what this would allow you to build. You're not gonna see, based on what staff has recommended, with a 5-foot setback or a 5 and 0, you're talking about a 30-foot wide house, and no one builds that. You either build a 22.5-foot wide townhouse that's multi-attached, or you build a 40-foot wide product that's on a 50-foot lot.
It's the standard.
So I think there's some sizing issues here as far as the step, and then if we don't add some attached product into this R4, I think you're gonna have everybody pushing to go into R5 in order to get some attached density.
Which the mission statement does call out townhomes, so I definitely think there needs to be probably some reconfiguration of the.
So if R4 could have some flexibility that it could be single-family detached, because the market could come up with, now, I say no one's building it, we are building 65 of them right now, but we had to design the product. But out of 800 units, 65 of them was all that we could do. It's 40-foot detached product, so it's a 30-foot wide house. So it's just not that wide for a single-family house, and they're not selling that well. The 50-foot wide is selling much better because people feel like they have more space. You can put 2 rooms side by side instead of hallway. And so I think what R4 will be some of these redevelopment parcels like Mr. Hall had up here that are smaller on the corner, and then you're gonna see some of these single-family attached dwelling units where you have units of 3 or 4 that are stacked together. And so if that's the way that this is really gonna go, I would recommend that you change the minimum lot width to 30 feet with a 5 or 0 setback, and then cap this at a maximum of 4 connected units. So that way you're not doing a string of townhomes that's 12 long, but you could do 4 units here, 2 center units, 2 end units, and you're creating blocks and forcing them to be separated.
And that's what you're putting in R4.
Yeah. But it would give you the flexibility to do single-family detached on a 40-foot lot, which gives you the same buildable area as a 30-foot attached product. So you end up with the same size house. The question is it attached to the house next door?
Yeah.
Or do you both have 5 feet of space in between? Does that make sense?
It does.
If anybody wants to see this, I'm happy to pass this around. This is the lotting that they use. Do y'all want this?
So, I guess, Professor, what I'm curious about is, so you're saying R4, do you think it needs to be wider because you want to not have townhomes in this grouping?
No, I think the minimum lot width should go from 40 feet to 30 feet. And then you should put a cap on it and say no more than 4 attached units in a block. Does that make sense?
How, are you not building 40-foot wide? No, you're building 30, 33, 45.
But what that allows you to do, John, is take the same buildable area that you would have on a 40-foot wide lot. And so you could even say, if you wanted to protect yourself from a single-family detached section, is you could say, single-family detached is a minimum 40-foot wide lot, but single-family attached allows for a 30-foot wide lot with a maximum of 4 dwelling units.
I think we would do that.
Does that make more sense from a legal standpoint?
It does. Yeah. Because that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Because what you don't want is to get an individually platted 22.5-foot wide house on a 30-foot lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're not trying to allow this folks.
No, you're trying to create a lifestyle living situation, which you would get in a larger lot, but that's really like a 140-foot lot that's just split up into 4 lots.
This is the maximum of 4 units.
Correct. So the one on the left is a 4-unit configuration, the one on the right is a 3-unit configuration.
I agree, we wouldn't want a whole block of that, right?
Right, so you do maximum of 4, then you have to break, then you do 4 and break, 4 and break. It keeps you from, if you were at P&T 6 weeks ago, there was a string of 32 units that were all connected in a horseshoe. It would prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
So you have sets of 4. But this product has been very popular. It is being built all across the state. It's being used in infill areas because you can redevelop a parcel like this 7.5 or 8 acres, and it's economic, and you can deliver a nice house at $450,000,
And that's attractive.
and it's attractive, and it's attached.
Yeah.
Everybody's pretty hard.
Who's purchasing that?
It's 2 very specific demographics. It's first-time home buyers with no kids and a dog, or empty nesters. So what you're missing is the 35 to 60 gap. They're buying single-family detached, but 27 to 35 is buying, and then 65 plus.
First time home buyers is exactly what we should do.
So 65 plus are buying 2-story, 3-story homes.
No. These are 1 or 1.5 story.
Okay,
That's why they're 30 feet wide.
just want to make sure we're understanding that, because what we have here is like 3 stories.
But that's also for
Well,
the single family.
That's for single family.
Yeah.
So maybe Kelly, what we do is we add 2 classifications under R4. So you have single family detached, and then you have single family attached, and you have 2 options under R4. Does that make sense? Yeah. No?
That makes sense.
And basically what the R4 does, just tells you that keeps the density at a certain point, regardless of whether you're attached to.
That's correct. So this is what the unit looks like when you're done. So it just looks like a big house. It looks like a 120-foot wide house. But I think you're gonna see a lot of that, especially on these hard corners that are redeveloped and where you have infill development sites that are difficult to develop because they have 1 or 2 points of access. You're gonna end up with a denser product. And so this has been the zoning code that I'm most concerned for y'all about, because I think it's where you're gonna have the most redevelopment.
I'm fine with the 40 for the single family detached. We're just adding the 30-foot, dropping the 30-foot
For a single family
detached,
attached.
and limiting it to 4.
Right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Are there architectural restrictions that can be placed on this? I mean, what you just showed. is a
That's
great
step
product.
2 in what
Yeah.
we're doing. We're doing this, the density step
I
1.
just wanna put
All
that out
pretty
there.
step 2, yeah.
We don't want 4 1960 townhomes connected, that is not at all what we want in our community, so.
Right, so you can impose certain restrictions. I think the legislature took away a lot of building material restrictions that cities can utilize.
Yeah.
So they keep stripping things from the cities.
Yeah.
But you can set certain standards.
You have, I'm going to speak up and I'm off camera, so I'm going to say I'm Michael King, I'm senior planner. You can set anti-repetition standards so that the faces of the buildings and the buildings have to change every so often. We currently have them in our form-based code and some of our other codes where every 5 units they have to change. So keep that in mind. We'll discuss that later.
And one point that I did not make, and I know you guys consider this as you deliberate, but I think it's a very good point that the gentleman made, and that is, as hard as it is for us to come together and think about our own needs, in this particular role, we have to always also think about the others in the community and the people who might want to come. So I'm in the process of buying a house. I'm obviously looking at Rowlett now, and there are a lot of options, many options. And I'm like, this is great. This is great until I'm like, well, now how do I choose? So having options is actually great, but I've had candid conversations with staff. I think of young people. At 53, I am reminded that when I talk to, what generation are we on? Y? Are we on? We're on Greek letter alphabet. Yes, we're on alphabet.
Kids.
Right. And so I'm realizing that not everybody that is at driving age even drives now. Young kids are not even getting their driver's license. And so they want to Uber everywhere and take a Lyft everywhere or get on public transportation or just hitch a ride with friends. And so I'm thinking, we're going to have to kind of think through now what are parking requirements like for this next generation. We may not need as much parking. Or we might need to think about the different housing types. I'm running into a lot of people who are like, I don't want to have kids. I'm happy with the dog. That is my fur baby is my child. And we travel with it. So, it's, as we engage in this, I just want to encourage everybody to also think about our nephews and our nieces, our grandkids, the kids that we want our kids to have. And think about the type of housing and what they've expressed to us that they want. They may not want to move back into the 2-acre house where they have to hire lawn service every other week. And it's sometimes a difficult task, but I think it's needed, and we make sure we make recommendations that's representative of the community that we serve.
I'll agree with everything you said, except for we have standards.
Yes.
And we don't bend on those standards, so. Sorry about that.
Oh, no.
To address your height concern,
Yes.
so I just want to give you some math to chew on. So each of these that I showed you have a 9-foot ceiling downstairs and a 9-foot ceiling upstairs. And I wish Councilman Shute was here because he went and toured these with me. The kitchen and dining area has a 12-foot ceiling. So if you take the 2 stacked areas of 9 plus 9, you're 18 feet, plus a 3-foot crawl space in between is 21 feet. And then if you use a 3-to-1 slope for the roof line, which 3-to-1, 4-to-1 is your standard slope, you need to add 10 to 12 feet on top of that. So you went from 21 feet to 33 feet. So we're just underneath this 30-foot, 35-foot, 3-story height limit.
35 feet, I have no problems with. 3-story part.
Was the lesser of. So it's the lesser of. That's what they've been in all of them. So if you can get 3 stories and 35 feet, power to you. But those are really short ceilings.
I guess I grew up in an era where 8-foot ceilings were common, not 10 and 12 feet common. In Little Rock, although big home builders have not hit compared to the private private custom builders, you still have a lot of 8-foot. What I just don't want to see is
It's about
a
32.
lot of 3-story. You go to Richardson, for instance, over just off of Plano Road and Renner, and they have some 3-story, 0 lot line homes over there. And
What's wrong with the 3-story, 0 lot line home?
what's wrong with it?
Why don't you want to see a 3-story home?
Well,
I mean, I'm not walking up the steps, so I really don't care if they want to live in a 3-story, because there's trade-offs. If they want to be 3-story, they're gonna have 8-foot ceilings, you know? If you want
Well,
9-foot
if,
ceilings or
well,
10-foot
they,
ceilings, you're gonna-
they have more than 8-foot ceilings. But what I'm getting to, John, is if you're going to my age group, then typically they're not walking up 3 flights of stairs.
Your age group is my age group.
Okay?
And like I
They're
said,
not gonna be,
but I
so
don't,
if you're.
but I don't mind if people across the street or in this other infill community have 3-story homes.
But if that's fine, but you don't say I'm gonna market these to the, 65 and up.
We're not
It's probably
marketing
not
anything.
happening.
We're not marketing anything, though. We're just trying to develop the requirements to allow people to build whatever they think the market bears. Okay. And, I mean, if we limit it to 35 foot, if they can go ahead and build a 3-story home with a 35 foot, hey, let them. You're right. You and I are not gonna buy them because we don't want to walk up those steps.
That's true.
We're trying to find an actual.
I was trying to show you a product that's on the ground. It's probably 3 units attached.
Well, it was a whole
Yeah, right.
It just missed a whole lot of development.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost. There you go.
Right there,
So,
boom, right on the other side
the
of the
north side, those are, how many units are those on the north side of the bush?
Right there. It's a long sex.
Yep.
Those are.
And so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are 5 units. So that's what's going to be in this next high density residential, where they're much tighter, because those are not even 20 feet wide.
Yeah, so there's like a 5-pack, and then you have a break. And this is often necessary for fire department,
Right.
right? So that they can get a hose through and make sure that they can.
So I think you need something less dense than this. Yep. Which is what I was suggesting for the R4. If you do 2 products, you have single family detached and then a single family attached. And your single family attached is a minimum 30-foot wide lot with a 0 lot line, maximum of 4 units connected.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think we're
Okay.
looking at the maximum lot coverage. We went from 60 to R3 to 75 here. Do we want to step that back to 70, or do you think we could stop the lot?
I can tell you real quickly.
Might be.
Just do this.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
Can you tell if these are 30-foot?
Those are probably 22. They're pretty narrow. Your end unit right here might be 30 feet.
Like Steven?
360.
2,000 square feet.
Yeah. You're looking at 4-foot sidewalks with, and those are basically squares where they're cut. So you're looking at a 20-foot product basically. Somewhere around 20 to 22 foot.
You're right at like 72% if you're not including the driveway. Because really what you end up with on, do you mind if I drive real fast? Is that okay? I'm sorry, I'm just kind of
You're
jumping
driving real
in.
fast, man.
You're good.
Wrong.
Blue Ridge Estates.
Or are you talking about the detached or you talking about the attached?
The attached, I was gonna show you a 35-foot wide or 30-foot wide attached product that's done today that we don't have it, okay? Let's go do. Yeah, this year. Let's do this one.
That looks pretty high, pretty dense area.
Oh, in the wrong spot. They did townhomes in here and this is similar to what they built in Cotton Creek. So you have two or this is 3 units attached and it's alley loaded. So you end up with everybody has a front yard and then it's all maintained by the association.
1, 2, 3.
That's gonna be 4.
Yeah, no.
But those are 31 to 35 feet wide, 38 feet wide as far as the unit goes.
So it's a shared steps going in, those doors
So
abut each other.
so this is a unit, this is a unit, and then the side units actually enter from the side.
Okay.
So from the front of it, from the front of the building, it only looks like it's a 2-unit building. And then if you come over here to the side, here's this guy's front door. It's on the side of the building, and they have their own patio green space here.
Or in their case, they think it's in front of the building.
Right. Right.
So they
It might be confusing to visitors. We're saying, I'm at your front door.
Come inside.
All right.
Park by the storm.
But we've seen success with this in other municipalities as well. I mean, this is being built now in Argyle, in Northlake, other areas where you have old commercial corners and even shopping centers that are no longer occupied. Developers are buying and demolishing the shopping centers and downzoning them to residential and putting in a product like this. So that's my suggestion. I'll let y'all do what you want with it.
Any clue what the price point of that is, say in Wiley or Saxon?
Well, they're currently selling in Cottonwood Creek right now, and they're selling in the mid-4s. And they start at 1,800 square feet. Right.
Would we need to be at the 75 for the detached?
I think you can come down for detached unless we're worried about, probably not gonna put a pool in the backyard with a 40-foot lot, are you?
Probably not.
Again, for a first-time home buyer in mid fours with that product, I think that's important for the city to continue to be able to offer something like that. And not sell, well, we won't have first-time home buyers if you sell them. We've got 3/4 of $1 million home. That's a
Yes.
My generation is barely at 4 floors.
For the,
We paid
for the
$370
attached,
for
yeah.
the detached,
But
yeah.
For attached, you
Yeah.
need to stay at 75.
Okay. So I think we're good with R4 definition. Did you see any other changes that you want to make for the attached?
No, I think it's helpful, and it's something that is not really called out here, is that staff has this build-to zone, the BTZ, porches, verandas, stoops, patios, bay windows. So what that allows is right here where this pergola is out in front of the building. So the build-to line is actually where the house is here. And then this zone allows you to come out from that for some type of enhancement, whether you do this pergola or a bay window, but something else that adds to the streetscape. You're not just building the house closer to the road. And that gets people back in the front yards. They're happy to spend time out there instead of going to their backyard. Do you need us to make a motion to incorporate all of that?
Like Krista, but I don't know. Derek, you're running the show now. What do you think?
So, hold on a second, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Preston, run that by me again, what you just said, like in that particular view, the house is where?
So the house, the side right here, you see the plate line at the bottom?
Mhm.
So that is, let's call it 20 feet. You're 20 feet setback from the street.
Right, okay.
And then they
That's-
have this BTZ, the build to zone, that allows you to come out 10 to 20 feet. So you can come out 10 feet to add a pergola, some front yard fencing.
Covered patio.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious about that because, if you got a 20-foot setback, and that's where your house starts, and you put a 20-foot patio on there.
No. It's maximum of 10 feet. 10 is the 20 feet.
10 to 20 foot.
Right.
Is that your intent, is to have the build to zone at 20, 10 to 20? You're saying within 10 to 20 feet from the street?
Well, it depends because sometimes it's back at curb, sometimes it's property line. So it
what-
depends. I
what
think for
you-
this we probably go property line in case we wanted to allow for things that use lots.
Well, the R4.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying you can come close if you were to allow them to use lot?
I think we can come close either way. I think we probably do property line because we're running into some issues where when we measure from back of curb, certain product types are not allowed.
But you're still set back 10 feet from that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So John, you're still set back 10 feet from the build to point, whether they're saying it's the property line or back of curb.
Yeah, I was just reading, I was just reading the R4 page.
Not necessarily if I'm reading that, sure. If you have the student patio over there, not necessarily.
I think that's where the question is coming from, because it says 10 to 20 feet.
So,
Yeah.
Two lines.
I think one of the discussions we need to have before we do this is a clarification of Bill 2 is either to the back of the
You can
curb
function your setback.
or property
Yeah.
line.
It's
So
like the
that
curb
it's
brother.
clarified whatever you're gonna have as far as distance. So one is the building from the curb or any additions that juts out from that to the curb or to the property line, but we need a second determination.
That's what they were just saying, is it's just mistyped on here, and so it should be from the property line.
Okay.
The minimum front setback should be 20 feet, and it allows a 10-foot encroachment.
Okay, yeah.
Does that
And
Is
that's
that clear?
from the property line.
10 or 10 to 20 feet?
A 10-foot encroachment.
Yeah, that's.
You still want space on,
I know, that's why I was asking. It's like,
well, because you know from reading a plat that the back of the curb is still in the property, it's still in the right of way. And you have 5 to 7 feet of additional right of way. It's technically the city's where the sidewalk is, but you and I know the right of way
because
in
you
front of
own
our
it.
house. Right.
Kinda.
Because the city's not doing it.
That's third party state law. Right.
That's right. But it allows you to come forward 10 feet, which would allow you to do
Right.
a pergola and a patio.
So I'm good with crossing out the 220.
Yeah, if we make a motion, we should for everything.
Do you want to do that since you've been taking notes?
I can definitely try.
Enlist the lawyer.
All right, so let's see. Yeah.
All in favor?
I guess I'll move to amend our form as follows. To accept with amendments. The single family, to add the single family attached homes with a 30-foot minimum width, lot width. I'm trying to use the same language, sorry. With maximum 4 units to a row. Keeping the maximum lot coverage of 75% for the single family attached. Changing the single family detached maximum lot coverage to 70. And then changing that.
Now, why do we want to do that?
You could leave them the same. The other ones be adjusted based on the buildable area and the assumed lot size.
Yeah, these are only 60 feet deep.
Well, that's a minimum. Your current building pad you're not gonna build anything less than 65 feet deep.
And
So-
then our degree was at 60.
You could increase this lot depth if you wanted to, John.
And the last change was making the correction to 10-foot build 2 center, which is named as stoops, patios, and windows.
Sorry, what's the proposed lot depth and what would you suggest?
Proposed is 60.
And what would you suggest?
I would take it and stack up to at least 75, which is what R3 is.
Very good.
Yeah, the problem with that is that you're going to end up preventing some of the development that you just saw on here. Because now you're looking at
The ones I just showed you are 65 feet deep of a building pad. And then you're gonna have a 20-foot setback in the front and a 20-foot setback in the back.
on the sides, like this one right here. So you're looking at 20 foot on the left-hand side. And the back, I guess, is what, minimum 10? Minimum 1?
Oh, we did 15.
Rear 15. So we got 35 right there, plus the depth of that other home, or would be the width of this one, is what?
I think you're okay at 70 or 75 because your minimum lot width is inclusive of your setbacks. It's not in addition to.
Minimum lot width is inclusive of your
It's the gross.
So if your minimum lot width is 75, and you have a 15-foot rear yard setback, now you're down to 60, and you have a 20-foot front yard setback, you're down to a 40-foot building depth, you're not gonna build on that. So I think you're okay at 75, and you're gonna end up with 95s or 100s.
So minimum lot depth of 75.
So on the form-based code for townhome 2, it's about 90, and on me it's 80.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So the lot depth of for a townhome within the form-based code, it's 90, and on me about 80 feet from depth.
So that would be what we step to next. So we're trying to create a step in between the true townhome and then single family detached. So create a single family attached. So another example of somewhere that this has been done really well, Argyle and then University Park is full of single family attached that are exactly like this, where you have 2 or 3 units attached. And they have a 15 or 20 foot setback in the front, 15-foot setback in the back, and then they're 80 feet deep.
So 75?
Still 75.
So if we say minimum lot width of 30, minimum lot depth of 75, build to zone of just 10 feet, minimum front of 20, keep the minimum rear 15, keep the lot coverage at 75, and building height is fine. The side setbacks are the only thing that we need to really have a clean definition based on whether it's attached or detached. That's what I'm hearing. Preston, Justin.
I would do clearly on the attached, it's 0 internally. And then the in units, I would do 10 feet.
And for the detached units,
5.
5.
Because you're gonna end up on a 40-foot wide lot, you would end up 5 and 5 with a 30-foot wide pad, which is pretty thin. But you still end up with 10 feet, which is a third of the width of the house in between each unit.
5 units.
That's for a lot line houses. Duplexes, townhouses, so it makes sense.
So 5 foot on a single family detached. And 0 and 5 foot for the townhomes or the attached, maximum of 4 units.
Right. So run the side yard setback back to me one more time for the attached.
0 to 5 foot, or you said you want 10 on that line?
5 is fine if there's no entry on the side. If there's an entry on the side, I would need 10. Sorry, did I just make that complicated?
No, but I'm just thinking that you're gonna have 5 on that side, and then the next home is gonna have 5. So that's, I mean, you have a 10-foot width.
Right, but for the
Run a
person,
sidewalk down there,
some of them do.
width is 3 foot wide.
And then you're half on one property, half on the other.
No, you got 2 foot between the house or between the property.
So you have a foot between each sidewalk.
Yeah, if you want to do that, or a single sidewalk.
That's something that we can maybe address, maybe keep it at 5, and then we can address it when we get into the building standard piece. Because what we've done before is combine the side yards into a common area lot, where the HOA has one sidewalk instead of 2 owners having separate
Right.
sidewalks.
Yeah.
And you do a common sidewalk that's 6 feet wide instead of 2 4-foot sidewalks or 3-foot sidewalks.
Those weird chunks of space that are not gonna make any sense.
Right.
You can't grow grass, you can't, it's just a big mess, dirt, mud.
Right.
Okay, so detached, the side setbacks are 0 or 5?
Detached is
Attached,
fine.
5.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, and attached is
0 to 5, 0 or 5. Obviously, where they're attached, it's 0, when you break them,
right.
you have 5. So I say 5 foot single family detached, 0 to 5 foot for attached units, max 4 in a row, maximum 4 wide,
4 conjoined units.
conjoined,
Conjoined,
I like that.
conjoined twins.
No medical terms, no.
Adjoining.
Good, that could be good, right?
Yeah. So was that your motion?
Yeah. Don't think I all that.
Think we pieced it together.
We can run it one more time.
Let's try it again.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
Can we start with all the requirements for detached right now?
Okay, detached. Detached. Do you have written down detached and then?
Yeah, 5 foot single family detached, 0 and 5 foot for attached units, max floor.
That's.
What's that?
I'm just trying to see what we can do.
Detached, just like there's 5 on both sides.
The minimum side yard requirement would be 5 on each side for the detached.
Forty for lot width. 40 for lot width, detached, is that what you, or agreed on?
40-foot lot width for detached, but, so that's staying the same?
That was staying the same.
Okay.
And then 70 foot,
For both detached and attached?
Buildings at 75
75, I'm sorry.
for both?
Like that. So-
For both of them, though, attached and
Yeah.
detached?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
the
then
only-
the second-
The only differentiation is the fact that in the conjoined units, one got a 0
Okay.
side setback.
And then a 10-foot encroachment is allowed,
Yes.
and then max 4 units in a row. Okay.
And then 70 foot coverage for single family detached.
So it's not where
I think
you go to
that's all.
75, just.
So 75 for both?
Well, 70%. Because we're 70.
I have down that you said 75 attached, 70 detached.
Percentage?
Coverage.
Oh, that's,
Okay.
For lot coverage, on 2 plots, 75 for both, a little more poor back.
Wait, 75 for attached? Okay. And 70 for detached.
You can, John, you could leave it at 75 for both and just
Yeah,
make
make
it
it
simple for the zoning
easy.
code.
That's
You're talking
precisely
about
what I'm talking about.
300 square feet.
Right.
It's not that much space.
And,
And somebody
So
may want to
seven-
widen their garage.
Okay, 75 for both, okay.
so you're fine with 75 both? or-
Yeah, 75
Okay.
for both.
Yeah, that's-
Okay, we have the motion, if y'all wanna.
All right,
I'll second that.
okay, did everybody understand that? All those in favor of the changes, say, or show by raising of your hand. Any nays? Have a nay. Okay, I'm a nay.
it's a lot of work in this.
We're gonna move through this fairly quickly, I think we know. So now we're stepping up even more. And keep in mind, as we go through this exercise, we have to realize that some of what we're talking about is already here. So if we're nothing else, we're creating a zoning district that's gonna help make sure that our existing developments are conforming. So with that, I took the liberties of trying to find a couple of projects. So this one, you all know it, Revel by Lake Brigham on, there's the two. So there's the Bayside one and then the one that's on the other side of the lake, the west side of the lake. So kind of the highlights from the R5 district, variety of housing types and master plan development. So, you know, if you've been over there, they have kind of the 4 or 5 story apartment building. Then they have these individual townhomes that are attached, 1 and 2 story. They have these multiple site plans, or these multiple floor plans. But what's also interesting about this particular project is they have quite a bit of open space. So that's probably a given the density that they were having, but they had to put in some relief because of the built environment and such. And then it says that they're marked by these residential amenities. So they have this Olympic style pool. This is interesting. Quite breathtaking there. And they have all of these other kind of amenities outdoor patio, and all of these things. So again, what?
Where did you
Yes.
say this was? Rowlett, that lake right under.
Yes, so there are two.
George Bush.
Yeah,
The U-turn,
exactly.
you go back.
Oh,
into the
Fort
village.
Yeah.
I've
And then
never
there's,
seen, I've never seen that pool there.
Yeah, it's a,
yeah, and then there's a new subdivision of single family just north of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right on the lake as well. So this is kind of what we're talking about when we're looking at this next level of high density residential. Urban character and suitable area that will have adequate public infrastructure, right there, George Bush. Facilities and services, schools and daycare facilities permitted already. And or under specific use or special use. So what are your thoughts in terms of what we're proposing here? And these are examples of kind of what they're calling multifamily townhomes. So those two-story buildings there are all townhome developments. Some of them actually are one bedroom. As I look through some of the stuff, some of them are two bedroom. Some of them are three bedroom. So it says the district is also intended to accommodate medium, high-density residential developments, townhomes, triplexes, fourplexes, and low-rise apartments. Schools and daycares or daycare uses are permitted by right or as a special use.
Now, just for my own clarification, because obviously I'm missing something here. What's the definition of townhome? Versus a fourplex, which was written there. I mean, I think fourplex could be one home here, one home here, one home here, one home here. Okay, where townhomes are basically, could be 2, 3-story, 4-story tall, but it's single platted lot, no zero, conjoined units.
And I would say not necessarily related to platted, it's the way in which the structure is built. So a fourplex could be an apartment building, which is 4 individual units, right? That could be a fourplex. But a townhome, you will have a individual door that you enter into. A fourplex could have one door, and then it's corridor, and then you have 4 individual doors to get to. So that
Versus an apartment,
versus an apartment.
which would be what?
A larger building with 12 or 14 units in one building. So
Exactly.
think of old downtown developments and old civic centers, Chicago, downtown
Yeah.
Dallas, those areas where you have an old home that has a central front door, but when you go in, there's stairs to go. Right, so you have 2 down and 2 up. That would be a fourplex. It's the form-based code used to call it a multi-unit house.
That's
Right.
right, and that's what I'm, okay,
And so-
that's what we're calling a fourplex multi. Because the other thing is the life safety requirements.
Yes.
So there's not a multi-unit house in this, so that was gonna be one of my questions, is that something that you favor over true multifamily development, is a 4-unit multifamily house in a dense area?
Not at all.
You'd
A
rather,
whole lot, this, I think from a building standpoint, it's,
they'd rather have a true multifamily?
a lot less, I would say, restricted on the building side, because there aren't any fire petitions between the units. I think also utilities aren't shared, or are shared. So, to me, it's kind of one of those things where it's a slippery slope. I don't know what you guys think.
I would absolutely agree with it.
Me too.
And so I think spent some time in Rhode Island where that kind of stuff happened. It's not pretty simple.
So I think that really this high density residential, it says it's high density, but it would also be, this is probably what you would
rezone Trails and Cotton Creek ends today because it has single-family detached, single-family attached, and a duplex product. What's being built out there would fit because you have 70-foot wide, 60-foot wide, 50-foot wide, 40-foot wide lots that are all detached. That would all fit in here. And then you have single-family attached or the duplex, which is really what we just talked about, taking down to a 30-foot wide lot.
Well, I think when you get into the triplexes and fourplex, oneplex, you're talking about implying one unit.
One
And
planet.
yeah, and then
With a
subdividing inside the one single building. Versus if you wanted that many, then you wind up in the townhome or the apartments anyway. So I don't want to see an individual home that somebody wants to subdivide into more than one.
Yeah. I don't think you can legally, but I follow your.
So why have it if we
So I mean, it's like bottom line question there is what's the difference between duplex and attached?
That was going to be my question for staff is what was y'all's intent in between differentiating single family attached to duplex in R5?
A duplex, as far as building code is concerned, can be on one lot.
Okay. So
Yes.
it's a single platted lot with two living units.
Right, with
I understand.
a common wall between them that is fire rated and separate utilities.
So that's a duplex.
Right.
Okay.
So the only thing you're saying the difference is how it's platted.
Correct. In a single family attached, like what Grenadier is building, it all moves on an individually platted lot.
Yeah, okay. And that kind of makes some sense too, because normally there's one person who owns a duplex.
Correct.
That runs out, that's like
And we often see that where maybe an older family that owns the entire property and then renting it out to their child or to another relative.
Yeah.
Particularly
Hopefully
if
they're
they look after that other person.
Hopefully they're collecting.
Yeah.
But going back to the other system, so this, for everybody's knowledge, because I don't have personal experience, but I know about it. Was not uncommon back in the 40s and 50s in Little Rock to take a house, a pretty good sized house, and you subdivided that inside the fourplex. My mom and dad, my aunt and uncle lived in one of those. I had an uncle that lived in another. My only remembrance of him before he went to a regular house has been in one of those type houses. So and that's why I said I don't want to see us go back to
Taking the house and chopping it up.
Yeah, chopping it up.
Apartments.
Yeah.
I agree.
The building code and the fire code has made that almost impossible nowadays. Some people will try it, but it's very, very expensive to remodel an existing home into a duplex or fourplex.
Right.
Now, with the fire code and the building code the way it is.
I would just rather the language be taken out.
Understood.
I don't think it's allowed in this, so you're good here.
Yeah.
Stanley, you're protected on that. I do have a couple suggestions in the essence of time, because I know we have a busy meeting.
Oh, that's okay, we'll push it.
Hey, you're the guy holding the meeting, right? Okay, so single family detached, I would increase the lot depth to 75 feet to match with the two zoning codes above it. So go from 60 to 75. No other changes. Single family attached, I would decrease the minimum lot width to 30 feet to match R4. Because R4, the single family attached is 30 feet. And then I would increase the lot depth to 75 feet and then clarify that the minimum side yard is 5 or 0, so that it matches with R4. And then duplex, since it's a single platted lot, I would maintain the lot width at 40 feet. Because you're gonna want at least 2 20-foot units. And then increase the lot depth to 60 feet. And then clarify that the minimum side is 5 and 0.
Well, it's a duplex, so it's one, platted as one, so side yards.
Oh, you're right, so it is just 5.
five.
Okay, you're correct. So side yard's just 5. And then townhome, I would, shoot. Townhome, I would adjust the lot width to 20 feet minimum and increase the lot depth to 75 feet.
20,
You have to do 20 or 40.
should be 30.
Well, 30 is the single family attached. So a townhome is technically going to be, is a denser product than even a single family attached. So a townhome is truly going to be a 3-story product instead of a 1.5 or 2-story product.
Right, but the attached, in this particular case, is it attached? I guess the question would be, how many units can you have attached?
That's up, yeah, that's up to,
2? Just 2?
oh, for single family attached,
Yeah.
I would have it match the previous zoning code, R4, which would be 4 units.
Well, to me, that would be the townhouse version, right?
Well, so the difference in development of townhouse and single family attached is townhouse is really not gonna have a utilized first floor. So it's 22.5 feet wide is your standard townhouse width. And so you have a driveway, garage, it's on your first floor, and then an office on the first floor. And then your living is all on the second floor, living, dining, kitchen, with a bedroom or 2 on the 3rd floor. So you're gonna adjust the height for a townhouse, but you reduce the width and extend the depth.
Okay, part of the form-based code was to come up with the concept of a building with commercial on the first floor, possibly on the second.
Well, that's gonna
But
be
definitely,
R6.
That's RM, mixed use.
Okay.
R6.
right, in mixed use. So if we're trying to, and that hasn't gone over,
No.
so why have commercial then on first?
This would not have commercial on first.
Oh, okay.
It's like
It would be very similar to this. So your front, you have entry onto the first floor, and you
Right.
enter into an entryway and office, and then also on the first floor is your garage. And then all of your living space is on your second floor,
Okay.
and then your bedrooms are on your 3rd floor.
And for
So that's the internal office to that unit.
Correct.
Not-
A work from
okay,
home office.
gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, I just heard, yeah, there I was going, no, not for the whole building.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around on R5, the difference between single family attached and town owners.
Single family attached needs to be wider. It's intentionally designed to be wider.
But is it limited to 2 units?
I would limit it to 4 because that's what single family attached was in R4. So the goal would be to carry over single family detached and single family attached from the previous zoning code, and then introduce additional density with duplex townhome multifamily. But you don't want this to be less dense than your previous zoning code.
So how many townhomes would be in the cluster?
I'm sorry,
How many townhomes would be in the cluster? 4?
I would do it, if you're gonna limit it, I would limit it to 6 or 8.
Yeah.
Because at 22.5 feet, I would limit it to 8.
So minimum lot width 22 and a half?
No, set your minimum lot width at 20 feet, and you'll get a 22.5 foot wide product. And times 8, John, it's only 180 feet, so that's only 4 residential lots.
That's Sapphire Bay.
What I'm saying is basically, yeah,
That's it.
is the
Detached.
limit.
That's a single family detached.
That's gonna be a non-conforming piece, but really,
That's,
the,
Sapphire Bay.
the whole point is high density residential.
Yes, but we want
That is,
because that's pretty.
The high density residential is to create a zoning code that would work for that.
People like this one, I like.
And for context, in the form-based code, Urban Village, well, actually, in 3 of the form-based code zoning districts, there is no minimum lot width for townhomes. So for context.
I didn't hear what you
So for context, in the form-based code, in 3 of the zoning districts that allow for townhome 2 products, there is no minimum lot width. It does not exist.
Yeah.
Just for context for y'all. So a lot of those existing townhome products that are in the form-based code, those are gonna be your 22-foot wide products for sure. So just for context.
okay, Preston.
And that's the minimum, 20 is general 20, minimum. Still gonna sell this.
It's like my, as the difference between my wife and me, I'm like, no, you gotta have 2 feet minimum. No, why? I'm not, because I am. And someday I'm gonna be pushing you around in a wheelchair.
I would find looking
just if you change your.
because there's 6
It's gonna be, from the standpoint of green.
That works.
Okay.
Oh, there's something about in here. It says, this is the drawing, this is, says a drawing of a large house, this is a mansion.
Well, it's just a little bit vertically built versus.
Yeah.
But I think to Christoph's point, you want to create the tool even if you don't apply it. If you don't assign it to a piece of property somewhere, you want to have the zoning code so that if you need it for Sapphire Bay for somewhere else, you can assign it to something rather than just receiving a bunch of PD applications.
Well, you don't have to personally want to buy this, it's a
So your townhome, your minimum townhome was what, 20?
20, so these are 21 feet wide, and what we see the most of in the market is a 22-foot wide product.
So
So you say minimum.
I think that's the minimum lot depth for the town.
75.
I would suggest 75,
75, okay.
and then suggest 3 feet towards 0 for the minimum sign.
On the ten.
The question is whether you would want to increase the max building height on a townhome to 38 feet.
I think you would.
Yes.
It allows you to get a full third
I
story.
think you would.
I would think absolutely.
This is a higher density zone, so it
First
makes
story is
sense.
garage.
Right,
I think you
It
want
makes
to do that.
sense. These are pretty narrow, right?
right.
Yeah, with the 3 button.
Well, your case is townhome might be better at 38
Yeah,
or
make it
45.
4, right. What
Preston,
It's 45 is if you have a rooftop terrace. Well, you do have the lake here, so maybe you consider that.
Personally, I'd rather go taller in this density.
In a town though, yeah.
So allow them to go taller, so set it at 45, which allows you to have a 4th floor rooftop terrace. Yeah.
It's the compromise that you have to go there all the way.
So you can
Yeah.
offer them like this and
Just give
Yeah.
them
Residential
more
zone.
ability to do.
to do
So,
something.
Yeah.
It's the compromise of not having a yard, you have a space for a terrace, yeah.
Is 45 enough height, do you think?
45 is enough for, yeah, 2-3 foot crawl spaces, your upper roof area. Yeah, 45 is adequate, more than adequate.
Okay.
You
So
do,
say 45 foot or 40 foot.
I was just saying 45 feet.
yeah. You do it 40, but the roofs would be fairly
It'd
flat.
be really flat.
Yeah, it's not as attractive.
But I think it's good to keep the 125 feet from R1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So that way you're protected. You have somebody at 45 feet staring down into your backyard.
Staring down at the back.
Yep.
I'm not that interested. We're not gonna be staring that long. In fact, they probably build a wall.
Not saying you can't do it.
Yeah. Hey,
I think that's everything. Did you want to make that motion?
Sure. I think we've lost staff, but I can take a picture, you know.
Oh,
So, single family detached, increase the lot depth to 75 feet, single family attached, decrease minimum lot width to 30 feet, increase minimum lot depth to 75 feet, and minimum side yard is 5 feet. The du- 0.05 duplex, minimum lot width is 40, lot depth increased to 60. Townhomes, minimum lot width changed to 20, decreased to 20, increased lot depth to 75. Minimum side yard clarified 3 or 0, and increase the maximum building height on townhomes to 45 feet.
I'll second.
and you say it at 3-story instead of increasing to 4? This the question is, what would you do?
I just have not seen much four-story enclosed product. So the fourth story is typically a rooftop terrace, which a 45-foot height allows, because you have the 3 floors plus a 4 or 5 foot wall rail around the roof.
They do those initials.
And then that way you're underneath the 45 feet, you have a peak on the street frontage, and then the terrace is on the back. So from the front, you're not looking at somebody's rooftop terrace.
Yeah.
They're actually.
So you've 45 feet. Is it? That's it.
I think so.
Okay.
God's
All right.
experience.
With the same permits.
Okay. So in addition to that, on the attached, the second column, you would make that also 4 units in a row.
Correct, maximum
Max.
of 4 attached.
And then down at the townhomes, 8, I think I heard 8.
Correct,
Max.
max attached.
Okay. All right. Anybody else got anything else? Multifamily, you gonna leave alone? Or address that next meeting?
I don't really have a lot of suggestions on the multifamily.
Let's just hold it to townhomes and let's get in for the second time, the multifamily the next time around, we'll have a discussion. So, since we have a motion on the floor, and a second, all those in favor? Like sign. Any opposed? See, I ain't even voted for them. That's because we already have them on the ground.
Right.
I can't prohibit something we already got on the ground.
This next one will be quick, but
All right,
So, we
so,
doing one more tonight?
I think so.
since it's 11 minutes till 7, we have a P and Z meeting at
Right.
7.
Yes.
And weather outside, we'll hold the rest of it, and we'll pick
Okay.
up on the multifamily
Yeah.
at the next meeting in 2 weeks.
I make
Meeting is adjourned.